I'm Violet Winters, 31 years old, and I still remember the exact second my life cracked in two. I was standing in the doorway to my parents' backyard, the Texas heat pressing against my skin when I saw it. My work laptop, the one worth more than some used cars, was bobbing face down in the pool. It sank slowly, like a wounded animal disappearing under the water, and I just froze. My chest tightened, my throat closed, and my brain refused to make sense of what my eyes were telling me. $5,000 of company equipment, weeks of client files, hours of security audits, my entire career's credibility, all of it sinking while I stood there paralyzed. And then I heard her voice. "Oh, sorry, I accidentally dropped your laptop in the pool," my sister Harper said. She leaned against the patio railing like it was all a game, her arms crossed, lips curled into that smirk I knew too well. A smirk that meant she had won, and I had lost. The words slipped out of me before I could stop them. "What did you do?" Her smile widened, her tone sharp as glass. "What you made me do, Violet. When family asks for help, family should help. Isn't that what Mom always says?" The world tilted for a second, because I knew exactly what she was referring to. 1 week earlier, she had begged me to loan her $18,500 for her latest can't-miss business idea. Some miracle beauty product that would make us both rich. It was the same promise she'd made when she opened a fashion boutique, then a juice bar, then a jewelry line. Each one had crashed and burned, leaving her broke and me the unwilling cleanup crew. This time, I had finally said no. And this was her response. I walked closer, the slap of my sandals echoing on the hot patio stone, and knelt at the edge of the pool. Water shimmered as I rolled up my sleeve and reached down. My fingers brushed cold metal before gripping the ruined laptop and pulling it out. Streams of water poured from the keys, dripping onto my shoes, splattering dark spots on the concrete. My chest should have been heaving with anger, but strangely, I felt steady, almost calm. Behind me, I heard my parents' voices. "What's going on out here?" I turned to see them at the sliding glass door, both wearing the same confused expressions. Harper transformed instantly. Her smirk vanished, her eyes went wide, her bottom lip trembled. "It was an accident," she said, motioning vaguely at the concrete. I tripped. "I feel terrible, Vi. You know, I'd never." And just like that, the old family script began to play. My father frowned at me. "It's just a laptop, Violet. Don't make this into something it's not." My mother rushed to Harper's side, wrapping an arm around her as though she were the victim. "Are you okay, sweetie? Did you hurt yourself when you fell?" I stood there dripping, laptop in hand, and saw the truth for the first time with blinding clarity. They would always excuse her. They would always believe her tears. And they would always expect me to swallow the damage. Not anymore. I walked past them into the house, water trailing from my ruined computer. I didn't say another word. But inside me, something clicked shut like a lock. This wasn't just a broken laptop. This was the moment my sister declared war. I wish I could tell you that my parents' reaction surprised me, that their instant defense of Harper over me felt shocking. But the truth? It was the most familiar scene in the world. My whole life has been built around a pattern. Harper makes mistakes, and Violet cleans them up. Harper cries, and Violet forgives. Harper demands, and Violet understands. It started small, back when we were kids. Harper was the sensitive one, the dreamer. If she broke something, a vase, a bike, a rule, it was me who was told to be the bigger sister. I was supposed to keep her calm, make her feel safe, pick up the pieces she scattered around the house. By the time I was 10, I had already learned the unspoken family rule. If Harper struggles, it's Violet's job to smooth the path. And it didn't stop when we grew up. When Harper dropped out of college halfway through her sophomore year, guess who drove her across town to interviews she didn't prepare for? When she couldn't pay rent, guess whose bank account got lighter so she wouldn't get evicted? When her latest business idea tanked, guess who helped her write apology emails to disappointed investors? Every single time, my parents brushed it off. "She just needs a little support," they'd say. Or, "Not everyone's as strong as you, Violet." As though my ability to carry responsibility wasn't a strength, but an excuse to load me with more. It wasn't only exhausting, it was erasing. Because in their eyes, I wasn't the daughter with dreams of my own, or a career I had built brick by brick. I was the safety net, the fallback, the one who'd always handle things when Harper couldn't. That's why the night before the laptop incident, when Harper showed up at my client dinner uninvited, my parents still managed to make me the problem. I had been in the middle of negotiating a contract when my phone lit up with her calls. I ignored them because I couldn't risk looking unprofessional. Then suddenly she was there, breezing into the restaurant, makeup flawless, hair perfect, all smiles. She slid into the booth like she belonged, asking about the investment opportunity she'd been calling me about. I wanted to sink into the floor. My clients exchanged polite but uncomfortable glances, their confidence in me visibly cracking. I held the meeting together by sheer willpower, but inside, I burned. Later, when I told my mother how inappropriate it was, she brushed it off. "You're being dramatic again. Your sister just needs help, Violet. You've always been the practical one. She's always been delicate." Delicate. That word has followed me like a shadow. As if being irresponsible, selfish, or manipulative were symptoms of fragility instead of choices. As if Harper's chaos were some kind of art the rest of us were supposed to admire. And me? I was the responsible one. The stable one. Which sounds like a compliment until you realize it means no one ever checked if I was okay. So when Harper looked me in the eye that day by the pool and said, "What you made me do," it wasn't just about the laptop. It was about every year of my life spent being told her wants outweighed my needs. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't ashamed. She believed she was entitled. And standing there, dripping pool water onto the tile while my mother cooed at Harper like she was the one who had been wronged, I finally understood something I hadn't dared admit before. They didn't just enable her. They believed her version of reality more than they ever believed mine. That realization hurt more than the destroyed laptop, more than the smirk on Harper's face, more than the dismissal in my father's voice. It cut through me because it confirmed the fear I'd buried for years. In this family, Harper would always come first. And if I wanted to protect myself, I couldn't just play the role they assigned me anymore. Something had to change. The morning after the laptop incident, I woke up still replaying the scene over and over in my head. My parents rushing to Harper's side. My father's voice telling me not to make it into something it's not. Harper's wide-eyed innocence replacing the smirk I had just seen seconds before. I lay there staring at the ceiling, telling myself to let it go, to chalk it up to another Harper disaster that I'd eventually have to absorb. But then my phone buzzed. It was a banking alert. Attempted transfer, $8,200. Pending review. My first reaction was disbelief. Maybe I was reading it wrong. Maybe it was a glitch. But the account number listed on the transfer burned into my brain. I had seen it before. It was the same number Harper had scribbled on a napkin at the restaurant just days earlier. The account she wanted me to fund. My stomach dropped. My hand went cold around the phone. When the fraud department called minutes later, my denial collapsed. "Miss Winters, did you authorize an $8,200 transfer this morning?" "No," I whispered. "Absolutely not." The representative's voice was calm, clinical, but what she said next made my heart hammer against my ribs. This was the fourth attempt since midnight. The earlier ones were smaller amounts. "It looks like someone's been testing thresholds to avoid triggering alerts." Testing thresholds. It was methodical, deliberate, planned. By the time I hung up, I was shaking. Not from fear, but from the sudden, icy certainty that Harper hadn't just destroyed my laptop out of spite. She had taken something first. My data. My identity. My life. I opened my personal laptop, the one Harper hadn't touched, and started combing through my accounts. What I found made my blood run cold. She had added herself as an authorized user on my credit card. There were pending charges at designer boutiques, a high-end spa, and electronics store. She wasn't just dipping her toes into my finances. She was plunging in headfirst. And then came the package. Later that morning, a courier dropped off an envelope from my credit card company. Inside was a brand new card I had never requested. My name was on it, and beneath mine, embossed in clean silver letters, was hers. Harper Winters. I sat on my couch, the card shaking in my hand, and tried to breathe. My phone kept buzzing with new notifications. Password reset emails I hadn't triggered. Alerts from cloud storage accounts. Harper was moving fast, systematically trying to lock me out of my own life. When I logged into LinkedIn, the final blow landed. My profile had been edited overnight. My job title now included silent partner at Harper's Glow, her so-called beauty startup. A smiling photo of the two of us had been posted as the profile picture. Only the photo was fake, a digitally altered image combining two different events into one fabricated memory. That was the moment the air left my lungs. It wasn't just about money anymore. She was rewriting me, replacing me. And still, in the middle of all of this, my phone lit up with a voicemail from my mother. Her voice carried that same mix of dismissal and pressure I'd heard all my life. "Violet, Harper says you're being difficult about the laptop accident. Why can't you just let it go? You know your sister has always struggled more than you." I dropped the phone on the table, unable to listen further. The word accident echoed in my head. They still believed her version. They always would. But this wasn't an accident. It wasn't Harper being messy or careless or delicate. This was criminal. And it was just the beginning. By the second day, the invasion was no longer subtle. It wasn't just unauthorized transfers or suspicious charges. It was everywhere in my inbox on my phone, even in the way my colleagues looked at me when they spoke. The first blow landed at dawn. My phone buzzed with a notification. Sent message confirmed. At first, I thought it was some automated system alert. But when I opened my email, my blood turned to ice. A message had gone out from my account to my biggest client, canceling our contract, effective immediately. The timestamp showed it was sent in the middle of the night while I slept. I could barely breathe as I reread the words, written in a style that mimicked mine just enough to pass short, clipped sentences, professional but cold. It was convincing. Too convincing. Panic rushed through me as I imagined my client reading it, wondering how a cybersecurity consultant could lose control of her own identity. My reputation wasn't just at risk. It was collapsing in real time. And the nightmare kept spreading. By mid-morning, 2 other clients had emailed to regretfully end their contracts, citing concerns about security integrity. In the space of hours, Harper had managed to sever relationships I had spent years nurturing. The irony was brutal. The one thing I had built my career on, safeguarding data, protecting identities, was the very thing Harper had chosen to weaponize against me. I worked frantically to contain the damage. I reset passwords, enabled every security measure available, called banks, froze accounts. But every time I plugged one hole, another appeared. That afternoon, the courier delivered another package. This time, it wasn't a credit card. It was a full investor packet for Harper's Glow, glossy and professional, complete with projections and testimonials. My name appeared on every page, listed as guarantor, silent partner, and lead technical advisor. I flipped through the slides in disbelief. There were charts showing projected profits based on shared capital, fabricated testimonials from industry colleagues, praising our sister partnership, even a doctored email thread with my signature at the bottom confirming my involvement. It was meticulous. Chillingly meticulous. The final straw came that night. As I sat scrolling through the mess she had made of my accounts, I got a notification that someone had accessed my personal cloud storage. I opened the folder, and my heart sank. Photos from my Cancun trip last year, the only luxury vacation I had allowed myself in years, were suddenly public. They had been shared with family members, along with captions twisting the story. "I'm flaunting my wealth while refusing to help family." The betrayal was total. Harper hadn't just stolen from me. She had infiltrated my professional world, poisoned my reputation, and dragged my personal life into the fire. And my parents? They still refused to see it. That Sunday, my mother called again, her voice dripping with irritation. "We're having a family meeting tonight about your behavior. This persecution of Harper over an accident has gone too far." An accident. That word felt like a slap. I tried to protest, but she cut me off. "Your cousins agree you're being unreasonable. Everyone's concerned about how you're treating your sister when she's just trying to get her business off the ground." The gaslighting was complete. Harper wasn't the problem. I was. I was the villain for not playing my part. I hung up mid-sentence, shaking with rage. My inbox pinged at that exact moment. Another email, sent from me, but written by her, was spreading across my professional network. This one apologized for unprofessional conduct and begged clients for forgiveness. She was dismantling everything I had built, one forged message at a time. I wanted to scream. I wanted to drive to her apartment, pound on the door, demand she look me in the eye and admit what she was doing. But even in my anger, I knew confrontation wasn't enough. She had crossed a line, and she wasn't going to stop. I needed proof. Evidence. Something undeniable that even my parents couldn't ignore, that no investor or client could dismiss. Because Harper wasn't just my reckless little sister anymore. She had become a thief, a fraud, a criminal. And if I didn't act quickly, I wasn't just going to lose money or clients. I was going to lose my entire identity. By the time my parents called that Sunday evening, I already knew how the conversation would go. I'd lived this pattern too many times to count. Harper would play the victim. They would rally around her, and I would be told to be reasonable. Still, hearing it unfold again in the middle of a crisis felt like salt in an open wound. "Violet," my mother began, her tone clipped and scolding. "Your sister feels terrible about what happened. You're blowing this way out of proportion." "An accident," she repeated, like the word itself could erase the evidence stacked against Harper. "She tripped, and now you're making it sound like she deliberately tried to ruin your life." I closed my eyes and forced myself to breathe. "Mom, she didn't just ruin my laptop. She's been trying to drain my accounts. She forged emails to my clients. She added herself to my credit card. That's not an accident. That's fraud." Silence. Then my father's voice came through, stern and weary. "Your sister says you're exaggerating. And frankly, Violet, the way you talk about her, it sounds vindictive. You've always been so hard on her." I almost laughed, but the sound stuck in my throat. Vindictive? Harper was systematically dismantling my reputation, and somehow I was the problem for defending myself. It didn't matter that I had screenshots, timestamps, bank statements. In their eyes, evidence was nothing compared to Harper's trembling voice and wide eyes. My mother sighed. "You've always been the strong one, Violet. Can't you show a little compassion?" Harper's struggling to get her business off the ground. "Do you want her to fail?" The words landed like a punch. Because that was the heart of it, wasn't it? To them, Harper's dreams, no matter how destructive or unrealistic, always outweighed my reality, my boundaries, my career. I wanted to scream into the phone, to finally unload years of pent-up resentment. But instead, I said quietly, "She's not struggling, Mom. She's stealing." From me. Another silence, heavier this time. Then my father cleared his throat. "Family matters should stay in the family. You need to stop talking about lawyers and fraud reports. It makes you sound hysterical. We'll replace your laptop, and you can both move on." There it was. The script I had memorized since childhood. Harper makes a mess. I'm told to clean it up. And in exchange, I get a pat on the head and a new toy to distract me from the damage. But this wasn't a broken bicycle or a late rent payment. This was my entire identity at stake. "I don't want a replacement," I said, my voice steady despite the fire burning in my chest. "I want accountability." My mother's gasp was audible. "Accountability? For your sister? Violet, she's family. She's always needed a little more help. You've never understood her the way we do." That line cut deeper than I expected. You've never understood her. As if my refusal to excuse her behavior was proof of my failure, not hers. I let them talk, let them circle the same lines they'd been rehearsing for decades. Harper's fragile, Harper's special, Harper just needs support. And beneath it all, the unspoken command, Violet needs to forgive. Violet needs to sacrifice. Violet needs to understand. But this time, I didn't bend. When my father finally said, "We'll discuss this at the family meeting," Sunday dinner as usual, I shook my head, even though they couldn't see it. "No," I said simply. A pause. Then, sharper, "What do you mean no?" "I mean, I'm not coming," I replied. "I'm done playing this game where Harper destroys and you excuse. If you can't see what she's doing, that's your choice. But I won't sit at a table and pretend anymore." My mother's voice rose, laced with disbelief. "Violet Catherine Winters, don't you dare." But I didn't let her finish. For the first time in my life, I hung up on her mid-sentence. The silence that followed felt like standing in sunlight after years of shadows. My hands trembled, Not from fear this time, but from the unfamiliar rush of something stronger. Defiance. For the first time, I wasn't the dutiful daughter or the forgiving sister. I was someone drawing a line in the sand. And I knew Harper wouldn't stop. But neither would I. The morning after I hung up on my parents, I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by scraps of evidence, banking alerts, email printouts, screenshots of my LinkedIn profile. For years, I had lived in the cycle of Harper's chaos and my parents' denial. But now I saw it clearly. Nothing I said would ever matter to them. They would only believe what I could prove. So I decided to stop arguing and start documenting. I opened a fresh folder on my personal laptop and labeled it simply, Harper Evidence. Into it, I began dropping everything I had, bank statements highlighting the unauthorized transfer attempts, screenshots of the fraudulent emails, the doctored investor deck with my name plastered across it. I took photos of the replacement credit card embossed with her name beneath mine. Every item, no matter how small, went in. The more I collected, the clearer the picture became. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't sibling rivalry. It was systematic, calculated, criminal. At first, the task made me feel sick, like reliving every wound she'd inflicted. But as the folder filled, that sickness shifted into something steadier. Resolve. I thought back to my work laptop, the one she had destroyed. What Harper never realized was that my company had installed advanced logging software on it. Even while she was copying files, even while she thought she was covering her tracks, the system was recording everything. Timestamps of access attempts, file transfers, even keystrokes. I pulled those logs now, secure and intact in the company's backup system, and added them to my growing case file. Every line of data was like a breadcrumb leading straight back to her. By midday, I had assembled a timeline. The night she drowned my laptop, the exact minute she accessed my credit card account, the early morning attempts to drain my bank. When I laid it out chronologically, the escalation was undeniable. And it wasn't just financial. She had blurred the line between sabotage and impersonation. Forged signatures, falsified emails, altered photos, all designed to erode who I was and replace me with a version of me that served her. I sat back in my chair, staring at the digital pile I had amassed. For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of control return. She wanted to erase me, but in her arrogance, she had left fingerprints everywhere. That night, Thomas, a long-standing client and friend, called to check in. After listening to me explain everything, he said something that startled me. You need to treat this like a case, not a family feud. Document it, organize it, build the evidence. That's the only language people like Harper understand. He was right. So I tightened my system. I created subfolders, financial fraud, digital identity theft, client communications, family voicemails. Each one grew with files, screenshots, transcripts. I annotated them, highlighted dates, added context. Piece by piece, I built a fortress of proof. When exhaustion hit, I reminded myself why I was doing it. Not just to stop Harper, but to protect myself, my career, my future, my name. At one point, as I was sorting through the files, I stumbled on an old photo of us, two little girls at summer camp, arms slung around each other, grinning with sticky popsicles in hand. For a moment, I felt that old pang of grief. The sister I thought I had doesn't exist anymore, I realized. Maybe she never did. I put the photo aside. It didn't belong in this folder. This wasn't about sentiment. It was about survival. By the end of the week, I had something powerful, a comprehensive, time-stamped dossier of Harper's fraud. If my parents wanted proof, I had it. If investors or clients needed reassurance, I could give it. If the law required evidence, I was ready. For the first time in years, I wasn't just reacting to Harper's destruction. I was preparing for my own defense. And deep down, I knew, once this case was complete, the balance of power between us would never be the same again. The more evidence I compiled, the heavier it felt sitting on my hard drive. Screenshots and statements might have given me a sense of control, but I knew I couldn't carry this battle alone. Harper had crossed a threshold where family arguments ended and criminal law began. I needed someone who could tell me exactly where that line was. So I booked a consultation with a lawyer specializing in fraud and identity theft. Her name was Caroline Vega, sharp, calm, and efficient. I remember the way she adjusted her glasses as I laid out the situation, sliding my carefully organized folders across her desk like I was submitting an assignment for grading. She read silently for a long while. Every so often, her eyebrows lifted, or her pen tapped against the paper. When she finally looked up, her expression was firm. "Based on what you've shown me, Miss Winters, your sister's actions aren't just questionable. They're criminal." The word landed heavy in the air. Criminal. Caroline continued, her tone steady. "Attempted bank transfers in her name, that's wire fraud. Adding herself to your credit card, that's unauthorized use of personal information. Forged emails to your clients? That's misrepresentation and possibly defamation, depending on the damage done. And the investor deck that lists you as guarantor?" She tapped the packet with her pen. "That's financial fraud. If she's circulated this widely, she's opening herself, and potentially you, to liability." For a moment, my mind reeled. These weren't just family squabbles or petty schemes. These were charges that could end with handcuffs. Caroline leaned forward. "Here's what I recommend. Document everything exactly as you've been doing. Keep multiple backups in secure locations. We'll send a cease and desist letter first, itemizing each unauthorized action, giving her a chance to stop. If she continues, we escalate. Police reports, credit bureaus, even civil litigation if necessary." I nodded, my throat tight. Part of me wanted to cry, not out of sadness, but from the strange relief of finally hearing someone name what I already knew deep down. This wasn't normal. This wasn't family drama. This was identity theft. But another part of me hesitated. "She's my sister," I said quietly. The words felt thin even as I spoke them. Caroline didn't flinch. Family complications don't erase criminal behavior. If anything, they make it more dangerous. Because she assumes you'll never hold her accountable. I sat back in my chair, the truth slicing through me. She was right. Harper had always counted on my forgiveness, my silence. That was her shield. But now, I had something stronger than silence. I had proof. And I had the law on my side. As I left the office, clutching Caroline's card in one hand and my evidence folder in the other, I felt something shift inside me. Not rage. Not fear. Something colder, clearer. Resolve. For the first time in my life, Harper wasn't just my reckless younger sister who made mistakes and got away with them. She was a woman who had committed crimes. And crimes have consequences. Walking to my car, I could almost hear her voice in my head, dripping with sarcasm. "When family asks for help, Violet, family should help." But this time, family wouldn't protect her. Not from me. Not from the truth. The night before I sent the letter, I barely slept. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my mind cycling through every possible outcome. Would Harper laugh it off, the way she always did when I tried to hold a boundary? Would my parents storm into my apartment, waving the letter in my face and demanding I retract it? Would clients or investors see me as dramatic, as the family narrative had always painted me? But then I remembered Caroline's words. She assumes you'll never hold her accountable. That was the key. Harper's entire pattern of destruction depended on my silence. Breaking that silence would change everything. By dawn, I was ready. I sat at my kitchen table, coffee cooling beside me, and opened the draft email Caroline had helped me prepare. The subject line was simple, almost sterile. Cease and desist, unauthorized use of identity. The body of the message was anything but vague. 17 separate violations were listed in black and white. Attempted wire transfers. Unauthorized use of my credit card. Forged emails to clients. Identity misrepresentation in professional networks. Circulation of a fraudulent investor deck. Each one documented with screenshots, timestamps, and digital security logs pulled from my work laptop. Reading through the list, even I felt the weight of it. Harper had always dismissed her actions as mistakes or accidents, but on paper, in sequence, they were undeniable crimes. At the bottom of the letter, the demand was clear. Cease all unauthorized use of my identity immediately or face legal consequences. I copied my lawyer on the email. I copied Harper. And for the first time in my life, I copied my parents too. My finger hovered over the send button for a long moment. It felt less like pressing a key and more like crossing a line I could never return from. Then I pressed it. The email left my outbox with a soft whoosh. And in that sound, I swear I felt something inside me release. Years of swallowed anger, unspoken resentment, and forced forgiveness left my chest all at once. The silence didn't last long. My phone buzzed almost immediately. A text from Harper lit up the screen. "How dare you send that letter? I'm your sister. You're destroying everything I've worked for." Another message followed. "You're overreacting about the stupid laptop." It was just sitting there by the pool. I stared at her words, the blatant shift in narrative. First, she claimed it was an accident. Now, in her fury, she admitted it wasn't. I took a screenshot. Another piece of evidence for the growing pile. Minutes later, my father called. I put him on speaker while I continued organizing files. "This is completely unnecessary, Violet," he said, his voice tight. "Your mother is upset. Harper is devastated. You need to retract that notice immediately. Family matters don't belong in the hands of lawyers." "Did you read the documentation I attached?" I asked calmly. "Yes, but these are misunderstandings that could be resolved without dragging the law into it." "So you've seen the evidence of identity theft and fraud?" I pressed. "And you still think I'm overreacting?" The silence on the line told me everything I needed to know. He sighed, then repeated the old refrain. Family matters should stay within the family. But I wasn't that little girl anymore, trained to swallow my anger for the sake of peace. This stopped being just a family matter the moment she tried to steal my identity, I said evenly. "And if you can't see that, then you're part of the problem." He hung up without another word. When the line went dead, I didn't feel guilty or shaken the way I once would have. Instead, I felt steady, like the ground beneath me had finally solidified after years of quicksand. The cease and desist letter wasn't just a legal document. It was a declaration, a line drawn in ink that said, "I will not be erased. I will not be silenced. Not anymore." And as the evidence folder on my laptop grew thicker with each frantic text, each desperate call, each clumsy attempt by Harper to salvage her scheme, I realized something incredible. For once, her every move only made my case stronger. The effects of the cease and desist letter rippled faster than I expected. By mid-morning, my inbox was already filling with replies, not from Harper, but from the people she had dragged into her scheme. The first was from Mitchell Caldwell, the family acquaintance who had quietly warned me before. Message received. Already contacted 3 investors who were considering Harper's pitch. They've withdrawn interest. A surge of relief rushed through me. For weeks, I had felt powerless while Harper rewrote my reputation, but now the tide was shifting. People were finally seeing the truth, not just her performance. And the unraveling didn't stop there. By noon, I had 3 more emails from industry contacts thanking me for the clarification and promising to cut ties with Harper's proposal. One wrote bluntly, if she's willing to forge documents against her own sister, imagine what she'd do to strangers. We want no part in it. For once, Harper's manipulations weren't earning her sympathy. They were costing her everything. Then came the investors themselves. Mitchell called again later that afternoon, his voice steady but tinged with disbelief. "Violet, she's desperate. She's knocking on every door in Dallas, trying to salvage funding. But the moment your letter circulated, interest evaporated. Word spreads fast in this city." I leaned back in my chair, a strange mix of emotions swirling inside me. Satisfaction, yes. Relief, absolutely. But also a quiet grief. For all her cruelty, Harper had always believed in her own illusions. And now, those illusions were burning down around her. By the end of the week, her so-called business partner, James Whitfield, sent me a direct email. "After reviewing your evidence, I'm formally withdrawing from Harper's Glow effective immediately. I had no knowledge of her unauthorized actions and want to distance myself from any potential liability." It was a professional death sentence. Without funding, without partners, Harper's Glow had gone out. Meanwhile, her desperation bled through my phone in frantic messages. "You don't understand, Violet. I was doing this for both of us. You're making me look like a criminal when it was just business. Why can't you ever support me the way a sister should?" Each one read less like an apology and more like a threat disguised as a plea. Each one went straight into the evidence folder. My parents, of course, saw things differently. My mother left a voicemail, her tone noticeably softer than before. Violet, honey, I think we may have misunderstood some things. Can we talk when you have a moment? Minutes later, a text from my father followed. We should meet to discuss this rationally. There are perspectives you might not have considered. I almost laughed. Perspectives? As if screenshots and bank statements were opinions to be debated. As if my identity could be reduced to a family disagreement. But I didn't respond. Not yet. Because the truth was, Harper had already responded for me. Every frantic attempt to claw her way back only strengthened my case. Every access attempt my bank flagged. Every client who forwarded her forged emails. Every message she sent calling me dramatic or selfish became another piece of proof. And the more she scrambled, the more people stepped away. By the end of that week, James had not only pulled out, he'd gone public on LinkedIn, announcing his departure from the beauty venture due to irreconcilable differences in business ethics. The comments section beneath his post filled quickly. Investors thanking him for the warning, colleagues expressing relief they hadn't signed on. For once, Harper's name wasn't followed by admiration or sympathy. It was followed by distrust. Her downfall wasn't explosive. It wasn't some single dramatic moment. It was a slow, steady collapse as every bridge she had built on lies burned quietly behind her. And I didn't have to lift a finger. I had spent years thinking Harper's power came from her charm, her ability to twist reality until people believed her version over mine. But watching her empire collapse taught me something important. Her power only worked as long as I stayed silent. Now that I had spoken, and backed my words with undeniable proof, she was crumbling under the weight of her own choices. For the first time, I wasn't cleaning up Harper's mess. I was watching her finally face the consequences of it. The knock at my apartment door came late on a Thursday evening. 3 soft taps, hesitant, almost timid. For a long moment, I didn't move. I knew who it was before I even checked the peephole. Harper. When I finally opened the door, she stood in the hallway clutching a showbox to her chest like it was a peace offering. Her eyes were red-rimmed, makeup smudged, shoulders hunched in a way I'd never seen before. "Vi, please," she said, her voice catching. "Can we talk?" I stepped aside, letting her in without a word. She moved through my apartment like a stranger, glancing at the furniture, the photos, the papers on my desk. Then she set the showbox carefully on the coffee table and lifted the lid. Inside were scraps of our childhood, friendship bracelets from summer camp, folded notes we passed in high school, faded photographs of us grinning with sticky popsicles. "Remember this?" she asked softly, picking up one of the bracelets. "We were inseparable once." I didn't touch the box. "What do you want, Harper?" Her eyes darted down, then back up. "I came to apologize." "The laptop. I shouldn't have done that." She drew a shaky breath. "We're sisters, Violet. That has to mean something. It might have meant something once, but not anymore." I stayed silent, waiting. Harper shifted uncomfortably under my gaze before continuing. "If you withdraw those letters to the investors, I can pay you back. Not everything, but something. We can work this out. Mom and Dad are heartbroken you're choosing your job over family." Her tone hardened on that last word, the old entitlement slipping through the cracks of her fragile act. I reached for my phone, tapped the screen a few times, and set it on the table. A recording played aloud, Harper's own voice from the day by the pool. "What you made me do. When family asks for help, Violet, family should help." Her face drained of color. "You recorded me?" I opened a desk drawer and pulled out a folder, sliding it across the table until it touched her fingertips. Bank transfer attempts. Credit card applications in my name. Forged emails to my clients. All documented. All backed up. Harper's hands hovered over the folder, then snatched at the papers. Her dismissive smile faltered as she scanned the detailed timeline, each action cross-referenced with digital logs and bank records. "Give me those," she snapped. I placed my hand firmly on top of the folder. "Copies have already been filed with my lawyer, the police, and the credit bureaus. You can't erase this." She froze, her bravado collapsing for a moment before she laughed nervously. You wouldn't really press charges against me. We're family." "I'm not choosing my job over family," I said quietly. "I'm choosing myself over enabling you." Her expression hardened, tears welling in her eyes. "Please, Vi. If this gets out, I'll never recover. No one will ever invest in me again." Is that what you want? To ruin me forever? I stood, calm and steady. I don't want to ruin you. But I won't let you ruin me either. Actions have consequences, Harper. It's not just a laptop. It's not just business. You tried to erase me. And I won't let that happen. She grabbed her purse, abandoning the showbox of memories on my table. Mom and Dad will never forgive you for this. She spat, her voice rising. I'm not looking for forgiveness. For a moment, she stared at me like she didn't recognize who I was anymore. Then she turned and stormed out, the door closing behind her with a quiet, final click. I sank onto the couch, my body heavy, but my mind strangely clear. The showbox sat open on the table, childhood photographs spilling out like ghosts. I stared at them for a long time before finally closing the lid. Minutes later, my phone buzzed. A text from my father. Harper moved her things out this afternoon. Your mother and I have reviewed everything. We need to talk. Another message followed from Mitchell. Thought you should know, word's getting around. No investor in Dallas will touch anything with Harper's name on it now. I leaned back against the cushions, the showbox still in front of me. For the first time since the laptop hit the water, I felt the knot in my chest loosen. Not because Harper was gone, not because she had lost, but because, finally, she hadn't escaped the consequences. And for me, that was enough. In the days that followed Harper's exit from my apartment, silence became my closest companion. No more frantic calls, no more forged emails, no more nights waking up to the sound of my phone buzzing with alerts. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe. But silence alone wasn't enough. I had to rebuild what she had tried to tear apart. I started with my clients. Every morning, I spent hours on the phone, explaining the situation with calm professionalism. I was the victim of identity theft, I told them. Steps had been taken. My systems are secure. At first, I feared they wouldn't believe me. After all, what kind of cybersecurity consultant falls prey to her own sister's schemes? But then something unexpected happened. They listened. Some even sympathized. Thomas, my longest-standing client, sent a company-wide email praising my work and renewing our contract with expanded services. If Violet can survive identity theft this sophisticated, he wrote, then she's exactly the person we trust to protect us. Others followed his lead. Colleagues posted endorsements on professional platforms, publicly affirming my skills and integrity. The digital smear campaign Harper had launched against me was buried under an avalanche of support. Meanwhile, my lawyer, Caroline, filed formal documentation with the credit bureaus, securing my accounts against further attacks. With every protective measure implemented, I felt the fortress around me growing taller, stronger. And something else began to change to me. I set boundaries I had never dared before. My phone went on silent during client meetings. My evenings became sacred, no longer consumed by answering Harper's emergencies. I filled my office not with family photos that reminded me of constant sacrifices, but with professional awards, travel souvenirs, and tokens of the life I was choosing for myself. The shift was subtle but profound. I was no longer living as the fallback for Harper's chaos. I was living as myself. My parents, of course, tried to drag me back into the old cycle. Voicemails full of guilt. Messages pleading for rational discussions. But for once, I didn't answer right away. I let their words sit unanswered because I knew exactly where those conversations would lead, back into the trap of excuse-making and erasure. I wasn't interested in erasure anymore. By the time Harper was asked to move out of their house, I realized something I'd never thought possible. My parents were finally seeing her actions for what they were. Maybe it was the weight of the evidence. Maybe it was the collapse of her business. Or maybe they had simply run out of ways to explain it away. Whatever the reason, their messages carried a new tone, hesitant, almost careful. We need to talk. We may have misunderstood some things, but I didn't rush to meet them. For once, the timing of those conversations would be on my terms. And in the meantime, I focused on what mattered most, rebuilding trust where it truly belonged. With my clients, with my colleagues, with myself. Because trust, once broken, doesn't just heal on its own. You have to choose where to plant it again. And this time, I was planting it in the right soil. 6 months later, I adjusted my webcam, scanning the faces of 8 colleagues across 3 countries waiting for my direction. Their attention was fixed on me, not Harper, not my parents, not anyone else. Just me. The vulnerability assessment flagged 3 critical access points, I explained, highlighting sections of our shared document. I recommend implementing the security protocol we discussed last week. The lead developer nodded without hesitation. We trust your judgment, Violet. Trust. A small word, but it carried the weight of everything I had fought to reclaim. When the meeting ended, I stretched in my chair and glanced around my office. Where family photos once cluttered my desk, now stood plaques, certifications, and souvenirs from conferences I'd spoken at. My space reflected me, not the shadow of someone else's expectations. A calendar reminder blinked in the corner of my screen. Cybersecurity Conference Keynote Identity Protection in Family Fraud Cases. The irony wasn't lost on me. What had nearly destroyed me had become the foundation of my next chapter. As I poured coffee, my phone buzzed with my mother's name. 6 months ago, I would have scrambled to answer, my stomach twisting in anticipation of another crisis. Now, I pressed decline and continued pouring. No panic. No guilt. Later, when I checked the voicemail, her tone was different, softer, almost respectful. Violet, I was wondering if you might have time for coffee next week. Just the 2 of us. Call when you can. I drafted a short text. Available Tuesday at 2 p.m. Bluestone Cafe on Henderson. 45 minutes only. Have client meeting after. Boundaries. Clear, firm, non-negotiable. If I saw her, it would be on my terms. That evening, I met Thomas and Rebecca for dinner. As we clinked glasses to celebrate a new international contract, Thomas leaned forward. Heard anything about Harper? Mitchell set down his fork. My colleague in Phoenix mentioned she's trying to start fresh there. Apparently, she's finally taken some responsibility for what happened. I nodded, surprised to feel nothing but mild curiosity. No anger. No longing. Just distance. 2 weeks later, I checked into the Westbrook Hotel for the cybersecurity conference. The clerk at the desk smiled as she handed me my key. Several attendees have been asking when you'll arrive. Your keynote is generating a lot of buzz. In the elevator, my phone vibrated with a new email. A publishing company was interested in my proposal for a book on personal security and boundary protection. I stared at the mirrored wall as the door slid open, catching my reflection. Shoulders back, eyes steady. No longer the woman defined by her sister's chaos, but by her own choices. Another buzz. A text from my mother confirming our coffee meeting. I typed back a simple reply, see you then. For the first time in my life, reconnecting wasn't about rescuing or forgiving. It was about deciding on my terms whether a bridge was worth rebuilding. And as I stepped into the conference hall, applause already beginning to rise as my name was announced, I knew one thing with absolute clarity. Whatever choices lay ahead, family or otherwise, they would finally, completely be mine.